with Heather's talk if we don't have any more questions left. Okay, thanks Elena for your great talk.
Thank you.
All right, thank you Elena very much. Yeah, so we have Heather here, last but not least, who will talk about moral judgments in children and adults. So when you are ready to share your slides, you are ready to go or fine to go.
Okay. Is it showing?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so good afternoon. My name's Heather. Thank you for coming to my talk on perceptual dimensions influencing moral judgments of animals in children and adults. And my supervisors are Dr. Jared Piazza and Dr. Charlie Lewis. So this talk will be based on my paper, How Children and Adults Value Different Animal Lives. So I'll go over the importance of the research, the procedure that we undertook to collect the data and analyze it, and the results we found and what this actually means. So why is this important? Humans relate to animals in many different ways, for companionship, to produce and test products, satisfy our appetites, and to entertain us. While we treat some animals with respect and even reverence, others we actively seek out and destroy. Everyday people come across ethical dilemmas involving animals, which involve situations where human and animal interests are in direct conflict. So when considering these situations and how to respond to them, research suggests that people consider the kinds of properties they believe the animals possess, like how intelligent or benevolent an animal is perceived, when deciding which animals to protect and value. While we're getting a better understanding of how adults value animals, little research has been done on children's perception of animals and their judgments of worth. Saying that, one recent study by Wilkes et al. Compared the way children value animal lives, specifically pigs and dogs, in relation to human lives. And they found, using moral dilemmas where animal lives were pitted directly against human lives, that young children were less speciesist in their valuing of animals to humans, meaning in certain situations, young children actually valued dogs more than people. So the attributions affecting adults' moral concern for animals are things like the animal's mind, their intelligence, their ability to experience pain, their emotional lives, whether they're perceived to be harmful or dangerous to people or other animals, their aesthetic qualities, whether they're beautiful, whether they're ugly, whether they're disgusting, whether they have great colors, things like that. Their status as a food source, and the similarity between the animal and humans. So the aims of this research are exploratory. This study sought to find out a basic question: do children and adults differ in their attributions? If they do, how may these attributions change through development? And since most research has been done isolating the attributions, how may these attributions interact, and which ones will emerge as more important when determining moral concern? So the procedure that we set up consisted of a set of 18 animals and 1 human. Participants were asked to rate the targets on a range of dimensions, which I will detail on the next slide, and then complete the moral concern task with all 19 targets. The adults completed the study online on Prolific Academic, and the children completed the study in school. This was pre-COVID times. So I had them sit down. The children only rated 10 targets on the iPad. This is taken during their lunchtime, so I had a break to set up. And then after they completed the ratings, they did the medicine allocation task. All the animals you see here are sick, but you can save them. Which one do you want to save first? And we went first to last. Our ages, the younger children were grouped. The mean age was 7.83. The older children were about 9. So the attribution task, we had them use pictures on a scale of 1 to 5. So if someone hit or kicked the animal really hard or stepped on the animal, how much pain would it feel? How smart or clever do you think the animal is? How dangerous or harmful do you think the animal is? How much do you think the animal is like you? How ugly do you think the animal is? We had a question about abilities. Animals have all sorts of different abilities. How awesome would you say those abilities are for this animal? And then some animals we eat. Let's think about whether we eat this animal. They answered yes or no. And then how yummy or yucky do you think that animal would taste? So our main goal was to develop a data-driven model of the attribution. So we used structural equation modeling to build models for each age group. And those were based on the correlations. If we had to make a decision, it was data-driven. And throughout the analysis, we used the median ranking score for each animal as our index of moral concern. So between the groups, this is how they tended to rank the animals. And the children tended to organize the animals in a similar structure. The adults definitely had more spread. So humans are number 1 always, and then spiders and worms are at the end. And so older children, similar. There's some changes in the youngest children. I mentioned earlier, we'll expound that. Sometimes dogs were more important than people, and we found that as well. So the model will start with adults and go to the youngest children. So for human similarity, it can be perceived as things that make the animals similar to humans. So we used it as an intermediate here. So for adults, human similarity is based on the animal's capacity to feel pain and their intelligence. And then human similarity is then the most important thing when it comes to determining their moral concern for the animal. They also included the edibility of the animal, which means that if the animal was edible, they rated it higher in general. And the animal's aesthetic qualities. The question was how ugly, but that was reversed. So this is a positive relationship. The older children, sort of similar, but the human similarity is based on the intelligence and actually aesthetic qualities of the animal. And you'll notice here, so throughout my paper we called capacity for pain sentience. So sentience is missing in both of the children's models, and I will detail that later. And you can see here that human similarity is still the most important thing when it comes to determining moral concern for the older children, but aesthetic qualities and, again, the edibility of the animal. So if the animal is edible, it is important to save. And the youngest children. Human similarity is based on intelligence again, but also their lack of harmfulness. And for this model, the most important thing for the moral concern is the aesthetic qualities of the animal. Again, sentience is missing in this model, and I'll go into detail. And then you can see here two differences. So in the adult and older children's model, edibility was an important factor, and for the younger children, it doesn't make an appearance. But what is important is that the animal is not harmful, so it's benevolence. So in general, adults tended to view human-animal similarity strictly in mentalistic terms, and sentience factored little into children's moral valuations of animals, and if anything, the relationship between sentience and moral standing was negative. If you look at the correlations, they're not significant because they're very different with adults. But one thing, children conceptualize sentience, the animal's ability to experience pain, in terms of the animal's size. So the smallest animals, the worms, the butterflies, experience the most pain, while the dolphins, the elephants did not experience that much pain, according to children. The overarching theme in the models were the aesthetics of the animal. It starts in young children, continues through to adulthood, always important. Participants of all ages showed greater concern for beautiful animals. And younger children highly prioritized aesthetics, while the older children and adults shifted their focus to include more appetitive and mentalistic features. And the benevolence of the animal. So younger children tended to value the animals they perceived to be benevolent, whereas the older children and adults did not put as much weight on this feature. So the picture with the dog at the front and the other animals lower down, the youngest children put the things like worms, butterflies, things that couldn't harm them, much higher than adults, and especially compared to things that can. So they adults put bees kind of in the middle, sharks in the middle, but the young children, those are dangerous, so they need to be saved last. And another theme of the models is that younger children seem to value animals less through a human-centric lens compared to older children and adults. They valued the animals for themselves compared to adults who placed a greater value on animals that could serve them. And it's important to note that younger children did tend to fail to identify animals that were eaten outside of their culture as food, and their edibility judgments were mainly restricted to the animals they specifically eat. Whereas older children were more aware of the animals that were eaten outside their culture, though they did not personally consider them tasty. So, in conclusion, overall our findings suggest that the manner in which adults approach the evaluation of animal life has its origin in early adulthood, considering the animal aesthetics is present in all models. But there's a gradual shift towards greater appreciation of animal minds, a mentalistic notion of sentience, and the utility that animals offer humans. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Heather. That was great. We have one question that comes from Kim. So she asked, interesting that the evidence suggests children are less specialist than adults. Do you have any idea where these more specialist beliefs originate? Do you think this is something that is learned socially, or does it develop in another way?
Well, children are still developing theory of mind, and they're more focused on what they can see in front of them, and the fact that children don't actually realize that other animals are eaten suggests that it's both developmental and cultural. Yeah,
that's quite interesting actually. We have another question here relating to aesthetics. So it's interesting that aesthetics are relevant for all age groups. What type of features, for example, fur, color, etc., do you see contributing to an animal regarded as ugly versus beautiful?
So specifically the research shows that things with big eyes, baby features, are more aesthetically pleasing to people, and the colors of the animal, like plain black and white penguins are less appealing than penguins with the little yellow on the sides of their heads. Yeah. It also is when things have more human-like faces. Like if you can pick distinguished individual features, then that's more aesthetically pleasing as well.
Very interesting. Yeah, I have a question in terms of just, you say your work is quite exploratory, but did you have any kind of expectations or just ideas when you started of what you would think would be kind of most predictive of these moral judgments or moral concerns?
We expected the adult model to kind of pan out how it did, considering that all those features have been shown to be important. We weren't exactly sure when they were all added together how they would show up. Like harmfulness should have been in the adult model. It just got completely lost. But for children, there really wasn't anything other than the perception that something is intelligent could possibly be important, but nothing else was studied before this.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess that suggests there's a gap as well in the theory and the research in this area. Yeah, all right. If there's no any more questions, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you again very much, Heather, for that interesting presentation. And we have, yes, all right, folks, we are at the end of the conference. Yeah, I just want to say on behalf of the conference committee, thank you very much to all our presenters. Very, very impressive presentation. It really shows the diversity we have here at the department. And thank you again to Dr. Daniel Larkins, obviously, for coming in and delivering such an excellent keynote talk. I don't know if, Margrethe, do you want to say a few final words before we wrap it up?
I can only concur with that, Matthias. I very much enjoyed hearing about all the work. I thought it was a very good variety as well as lots of evidence of ingenuity in dealing with the adaptations that were necessary over the past year. So well done, everybody. Yeah, I hope to see you around soon again. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.